I just have two questions for you. Who do you think you are, and who do others think you are? You know, I have the privilege of working with top-level executives all over the world, and these are the questions I ask them. It's the way that I kick off any coaching engagement because sometimes I have to battle with them around a particular word that I want to explore with you today, and that word is authenticity. Authenticity. How many of you are familiar with the term? Yeah, it's a word I'm hearing more and more these days. It's like the buzzword of all buzzwords. People say that one of the first traits they're looking for in a leader is authenticity. And apparently, people are showing how authentic they are by posting zillions and zillions of posts on Instagram and TikTok. And that's great. But what does authenticity actually mean? Some say being authentic is the same as being honest. You know, just bring your whole self to work. Be yourself. One time I was working with a group of executives on the strategies and techniques to help them better connect to their clients and their customers and their employees. And one guy said, no, I don't want to do any of this. I just want people to get to know the real me. I'm authentic. But this conception of authenticity, take me or leave me, is actually a stop sign to our growth. I mean, for example, there are lots of different versions of me. This is me last Saturday hanging out with my daughter Lulu and our dog Pepper having pizza. And this is authentically me as well, standing here before you. Which version of the authentic me do I bring to meet with a particular person at any given time? This, then, is why I'm so excited to share with you the definition of authenticity that I work with my clients around, and I'm going to share with you now. It's drawn from psychology, and it simply states, authenticity is the degree to which a person's actions consistently connect with their values and their desires. Your authenticity is the connection between your actions, your values, and your desires. That's the myth of authenticity. It is not a stop sign. It's a starting place. It's a go sign. It's a grow sign. So let me tell you a little story about me. I grew up in a tiny town called Farmland, Indiana. It's not just the description of the area. It is actually the name of the town. And in that town, as you might imagine, there are more cows and pigs than there are people. There's not a single stoplight in the entire town. And when I was a kid, the tallest building was, and still is to this day, the grain elevator. I moved there with my family from a bigger town near Chicago when I was about 7. And my parents, they were city folk, but I was country, and I sounded country. For example, the name of my favorite teacher when I lived in Farmland was spelled like this, but I pronounced it like this, Mrs. Werschler, because I was country. And at that same time, though, I had a desire to be a TV reporter. I wanted to tell stories of other people and travel to the far-flung places that I read about in the headlines. The only places we were traveling at that point, though, was back up to that bigger town near Chicago where my parents were from, because my mom wanted to visit her best friend Sharon, who ran a beauty salon. When we go visit my family, we'd also go and hang out at the salon to get our hair cut for next to nothing. And Sharon and my mom had this routine that they would do every time, and it went like this. Sharon would look over at me and say to my mom, oh, it's such a nice little country girl that you adopted. And my mom would say, I know, isn't she such a hillbilly? She should have a little stalk of wheat hanging out of her mouth. And I'd be like, I hear you, I'm right here. But I think back about that now, and I do realize that if I wanted to become a TV reporter, let alone a network-level television correspondent standing in front of the White House doing live shots, I probably could not pronounce our nation's capital the same way that I pronounced my favorite teacher's name, Washington. I needed to grow, develop, and change. But you don't have to change everything. You can make purposeful choices about the things you want to keep and the things you want to evolve. So when I went away to college and I did work on softening my farmland accent, I also chose deliberately to make some of the values that I'd learned while living in farmland part of who I am. For example, I did learn that taking a warm casserole to a friend when they're hurting is a nice thing, like so many of our neighbors did for us when my dad, who was a corporate pilot, died alone in a plane crash 2 weeks before Christmas when I was 11. And later, when I was 14, and I snuck off to the disco when my mom told me not to, I learned that other parents are going to rat you out because it takes a village. Authenticity, then, calls for us to choose our inner values and then deliberately think about our desires and develop ourselves from the outside back in. And this, then, is something that we can start to think about and start to apply. But how do we do this? Well, first, I think it's important to acknowledge how most of us are living our lives currently. It's like we're in a rowboat out to sea, without oars and without paddles. We are thinking about our careers and our families, our relationships, our lives in an aimless, floating about fashion. While we are floating aimlessly and are adrift, however, we are still communicating. In fact, we are never not communicating. Pardon the double negative. We are always communicating, either by default or by design. The good news is, though, that you can start to begin to take more control of how you purposefully communicate and connect. If not now, when? And this, if you're thinking about it, is connected to the idea of the growth mindset as described by the Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck when she talks about how we can change our neural pathways, our thought patterns, the same way that a tennis player can develop their serve, or that I had to practice piano and the scales for hours and hours. With time and practice, you can go from default to design. All you have to do is embrace that growth mindset and also think about what I describe as my ADD principle: awareness, desire, discipline. Heighten your awareness about who you are and how others see you. Get that desire about where you want to go and what you want to do. And then get serious about your discipline and your practice. You know, Simon Sinek talks a lot about how to find your why. I talk about how to find your how. And here is how I learned to drive a car when I moved to Ireland. A few years ago, I moved to Ireland, and one of the first things I had to do, of course, was to buy a car. So I did that. I went to the dealer, and the dealer gave me the keys for the car, and he said, "Very good, off you go." And I said, wait a minute. I'm not getting behind the wheel of this car. I am an American. I've only ever driven on the right-hand side of the road. This is really scary. He says, "No, you'll be grand. Just take the steering wheel and the 10 and the 2 and just keep that line around there on the road right by your body. You'll be fine." Well, I had the awareness I needed to change. I had the desire because there was no other way to get around. So I did get behind the car, hit the steering wheel at 10 and 2, and I can tell you that when I came up to that first roundabout that you guys are all so fond of, my whole body by default wanted to go this way, but I disciplined myself to go this way. And a few years later, I am very proud to say that if you do come to visit me in Ireland and get on the roads, you are safe, because I have gone from default to design. You can unlearn and relearn. And that is what is so powerful about learning to grow and develop and make purposeful choices about how you connect. So now, let's think about the top 4 ways that we can immediately take more control of our lives. I like to talk about them as my ABCDs: appearance, behavior, content, delivery. Appearance. We send a message about ourselves in roughly the same time it takes for our eye to send a message back to our brain. That's like a nanosecond. And it's not judging, but it is simply the way that we make sense of each other. So it calls on us then to examine our clothing, our accessories, our grooming, all of it. Think about the next person you're going to be meeting with. Do you want to show them respect? Do you want them to feel valued? Do you want them to hire you, to promote you? It's not about making everybody a carbon copy of each other, but it is about making informed choices, because our appearance does send a message to other people about how they think we want to be treated. Appearance. B, behavior. I'm going to tell you another quick story about another client. This one, the head honchos from corporate land asked me to come and meet because this guy had great numbers with productivity and profit margins, but his numbers around people management were in the gutter. So I was pretty nervous about coming to his office because I knew he wasn't going to probably be happy to be meeting with me since he was being forced to. Went up the stairs to his office. The door was wide open. I walked right in. He didn't get up. He stayed right there behind his desk with his arms folded, and he looked at me and he said, I don't know why corporate has sent you, because you know my people skills are great. I've got an open door policy. You can see you walked right through that door. And I said, well, when was the last time that you got out from behind your desk and walked through the open door yourself and out to your employees and asked them how they were doing? And he hadn't thought of it. In fact, most of us aren't thinking about our own behaviors at any given time consciously. So here's one thing that we can do to take more control of right around our behavior is our body language. Without moving, just with your eyes, take a look at each other seated around you, and what are you reading? How are they seating? How are their expressions? What's their posture? The thing is, without even thinking about it, you're experts at reading body language, but too few of us are experts in delivering purposeful, positive body language. So if I count to 3, I want you all to show me your most positive body language. 1, 2, 3, go. You're sitting up, you're leaning in about 30 degrees, you're smiling. All of that indicates to others that you're supportive, you're understanding, you're agreeing. But what's great about this is it doesn't just send a message to others, it also sends that message back to you. So the next time that you're in a virtual or an in-person meeting and you feel your focus slipping, try standing up, try smiling. We send so many messages without ever uttering a word. Remember that guy I was telling you about who didn't smile? Well, I did some more work with him too. I asked him to read a couple paragraphs about his work, pretending he was talking to his employees, and I recorded him on my phone. He didn't smile once. So I asked him to do it again, and this time I said, smile like your face is going to crack. And he said, I hate this happy, clappy stuff, but he did it anyway. And then I played both of those recordings back to back for him without the sound. And he listened to the first one and said, I don't even like that guy. And he looked at the second one where he thought he'd been smiling really broadly, and he said, I could even go more. And so this is something that all of you can do too. You can take a couple of paragraphs about your work, read it out loud, then turn off your sound and play it back. Do you like you? How can you explore your expressions, your animation, your eyebrows? If you don't like what you're talking about, how is anybody else going to? And I am happy to say that after about 6 months of additional behavior modifications, my client did develop that heightened awareness, and he actually came to desire positive outcomes and disciplined himself to become what I'm happy to say is one of my most positive testimonials to this day. That's appearance. There's behavior. C is content. 2 words about content. Words matter. And now 2 quick thoughts. If you are very informal, a lot of slang or a lot of cursing in your style, and you're junior looking for a promotion, you might need to change your content. If you are senior, you might also think about how that might be affecting and impacting your lasting positive legacy. On the other hand, if you're overly formal, if you're really academic or super tech speak or really businessy jargon, you're probably distancing yourself from new hires, other departments, or people outside of your university or your organization. Think about your audience and craft your content to connect with them. Use heartfelt words, colorful words, words that are simple, words that are easy to understand, and most of all, have fun. A is for appearance, B is behavior, C is content, D is my favorite to coach my clients around. Remember that little girl from Farmland, Indiana? I learned not only to soften my accent, but also to play with my voice the same way I learned to play the piano. Think about your voice as an instrument. You can develop projection, enunciation, so that you can be more easily understood. So go back to your phone, your recording, after this talk and hit that again, reading a couple more paragraphs about work. This time, since you've already powered up your body language to be more expressive, layer on expressive voice. Try playing with the inflection, with vowels that are rounder, with consonants that are more crisp. Explore, but again, have fun. And my favorite tip of all, have energy. If you don't think that you're liking the sound of how it's coming across, how is anyone else going to like it? And if you think you're boring, you are. There you have it. My fundamentals about how you can take more control right now, if not now, when, over your appearance, your behavior, your content, your delivery. It's up to you to make the choices, to develop your character, to become the you want to be. It doesn't make you another person. And if you are right now thinking, this sounds a lot like fake it till you make it, I want to push back on you on that because I don't actually like that phrase because I think it implies deceit. When you genuinely care enough about the other person to think about how to purposefully connect with them, that doesn't make you fake. It makes you more real. It makes you more authentic. And if you're also thinking, well, these are small changes, Gina, and I don't know if they're really going to make any big difference. This reminds me of a few years ago, I was in South Africa facilitating the International Children's Peace Prize with Archbishop Desmond Tutu, may he rest in peace. And he said, if you think you're too small to make a difference, think about the last time you were stuck in a room overnight with a mosquito. Take it from this little girl from farmland, Indiana. Your self-awareness and your self-understanding are meant to live in harmony with your self-improvement and your self-development. You are in that boat, but now you have oars and paddles. Please heighten your awareness. Think and envision your desires, and then discipline yourself to begin designing the you and the life that you want to achieve. Thank you so much.